Today I'm going to take a look at Dresden plates, and I want to kind of just tell you a little bit about what all is involved in, their making, or, the names of all the parts, right? Because if you've never worked on a Dresden quilt, this is brand new to you, and this might be helpful. I also want to talk about the different looks that you can achieve. So I want to take a look at I've made this quilt a lot. So I want to take a look at not all, but some of the quilts that I've made in the past, and then just try to give you, a little bit of insight into how they can look, or, different things you can do. So let's take a look at that now. All right, so here we are in my folder full of A Dresden Quilts. These are not all of the Dresden quilts that I've made, but I think I've got most of them in here. And we're just going to try to look at flimsies or quilt tops today. I'm not going to pull up finished quilts because they're harder to see in pictures. All right, so let's look at something. I wish I had one single plate, but here is a stack of plates. Now, when they look like this, they're called plates. This right here that my cursor is going across, that's a blade. So that's an individual blade, and the Dresden plates that we are making in this quilt are made up of 20 blades. I always like to put 10 blades in one fabric and then 10 blades in a second fabric. But you are welcome to, make them with 20 different blades if that's something you want to do. To me, I feel like it's visually striking this way, but I've done both, so do what your heart desires. All right, so that's a look at a plate. So these are Dresden plate blocks. That's what the blocks end up looking like. All right, so you see this is your plate, this is your blades, this right here is your center, and then this is your background block. So when we start the quilts along, we are going to focus on background blocks first. And they're just a basic 4-patch block, nothing to them, really, really simple. We'll get all 30 of them done that very, I think our second week of the quilt along. And what goes on here is you make the background block, then you make your plate, and you sew it down onto your background block. And then once you got those 2 steps out of the way, you stick a center on there. Now these centers, and I'm going to show you several different looks at centers, they can look a lot of different ways. This is what they look like, raw edge applique style, with the heat and bond in the back, which we're going to talk more about soon. And this is just, a basic circle. All right, so that is pretty traditional looking right there. I mentioned the raw edge, and we'll really dig into that during the quilt along, but you don't have to do that. You could do, hand applique or needle turn applique or something like that if you wanted to. And I've got several links in the new pattern that takes you to demos for those methods. But during the quilt along, I'll be teaching and doing this method right here, but not circles, and I'll show you that soon. Let me just show you that right now. All right. This is kind of what I'm going to do during this quilt along, is cut out actual flowers, fussy cut them from fabric, and then use those for my center. This quilt was actually a mix, so I've got some of them that are circles, and then some of them, that are fussy cut flowers. You do as you please, so whatever you want to do is going to be fine. Okay, so most of these quilts, and I'm going to show you a few, most of them I'm using this super high contrast with my blades. And that is such a fun look. I think that is probably the most fun, is this super high contrast. And let me show you a couple more with the high contrast. Let's see. Here we go. So more high contrast, and what I mean by high contrast is that it's very distinct 2 different color blades being used. And this is with circles as my centers, so this is a good look. And this one has a very busy low volume background. So some of these, like this one here, let me see if I can put these on both on the screen. I wish I had a better picture of this one. But this one here, has the high contrast plates, but my background here is very, very pale. It's still scrappy, it's still low volume, but it's all very minimal design, minimal color going on. Whereas this one, high contrast plates, busy background, like major busyness. I like both looks. So, you know, whatever fabric you've got to use, or whatever you're wanting to use, or whatever you like best, do that, because there's no end to the amount of personal touches that you can put on this quilt, you know, to make it your own. All right. I don't think I have a better picture of this one here than this, but it's quilted. I didn't want to show you this one. This one is extra busy background because I've popped in some gray. I think I made this custom for somebody who specifically asked for some pops of gray, so that's kind of why I did it. I'm not necessarily as crazy about this one, but this is a good example of fussy cut centers that weren't cut like flowers. Like, you know, that's some kind of little medallion cut out of the flower. That looks like an Anna Maria Horner fabric right there. There's a little bird. So you don't necessarily have to cut flowers out in their flower shapes. You can fussy cut in, you know, lots of different ways. All right, I'm trying to show you what happened? I'm trying to show you non-quilted photos, but I may not have as many as I think I have. Kind of minimal, but it's got a couple of pops, nowhere near as busy as that other one. So there's another look at backgrounds, and this is that one that I, you know, cut the flowers out of. So that's kind of what they look like. And if you're looking at this and you're thinking there's not a Dresden plate on every block, that's how the Dresden pattern looks. There's 30 blocks in the quilt, and 20 of them have Dresden plates and 10 do not. I think it gives it a little bit of a more modern look, and also doesn't take as long. All right, so let me show you this one that is more recent to me. Now this is not high contrast. This is low contrast on my plates. I actually used my Cinnamon Tea fabric collection on this one. So this one is a lot more subtle. I think it's just as pretty as the brighter ones, but it's just, you know, a different look. So whatever your mood you're feeling, you know, they can look different ways. I've still tried to do a little bit of contrasting on these plates because it makes for such happy plates, but the contrasting is not quite as bright. So this background is also fairly busier. It looks like I've got some peach also used in my background. So if you didn't want to go entirely low volumes, you can see how this might look, you know, with some pops of color in the background too. Let me see if I've got a better picture of that quilt. Here's it finished. It's quilted, so you can't really see fabrics that well, but there it is. I don't think this one, and I think this quilt is from 2022, and I don't think I have, there's a better look at that background. Yeah, I like that background. I will probably do something. I think I'm going to be working with pinks and yellows this time, so I think I might stick with a whiter background, like lots of pale low volume maybe this time. I don't know. Oh, here's one. Did I show you this one yet? I'm not sure I did, but this one, you know, is a little bit darker colors used instead of the brighter or instead of the subtle. This one has a fairly busy background, but not, you know, I've got those in the background, so that's a little bit even busier. But high contrast plates. This is the circle centers. I like that quilt. All right, so let's talk about those new fabrics that I put out. Wait a minute, is this a different quilt? That looks like the same quilt. I put out these new fabrics, and I don't have a picture for the fabrics in front of me, but you know, you cut out the flower and you applique it with heat and bond to the center of your plate. After I did that before I made this video, and what I noticed was that my plate and my center are very similar in color, and I wish I had used something a little bit more. If I had used colors that weren't similar, I think the centers would have popped a little bit more. So when I make these blocks for the quilt along, I'm going to try to use high contrast. Like if I use peach and yellow for my plate, I might try to use, you know, green for my center. Just something with super contrast so that, you know, it pops, because I love those centers. I love the new fabrics, and I really, really want them to be a standout on this new quilt. So that's something I'm going to do. All right, so at the time of recording this video, I'm a little more than 2 weeks from beginning this quilt along. So if you haven't signed up yet, there's a link below where you can do so. I'm also going to put a link to all the kits that we have for this quilt. We're making kits for just the foreground, and then we've got where you can add on background, and we also just have some low volume bundles if you wanted to just look at those. So I'll put links to everything below this video, and I'll see you next time.